Welcome to the Tavern. It's Monday, the first Monday of 2026, and we have got a lot to celebrate already. I mean, just a few days into this thing. So please gather around. Hope you have a good drink for the Tavern. I don't know if who else had a grandpa that made them a hot toddy when they were sick? Whiskey, lemon juice, honey. Who gives whiskey to an 8-year-old? Only a grandfather that really cares about their kid getting. No, I'm kidding. This is not actually a hot toddy. I know most of you have probably had one in your life at some point, or given one by, a 90-year-old great grandfather or somebody that was convinced it would make you better. This is actually for me. I'm trying to get over. I don't know what I've got, but I've been in bed for several days and just coming up for air and emerging. I've still got a lot of fog brain, but I'm emerging. Anyway, I am doing Patriot Brew coffee with a lot of really good honey in it. So I do think honey is just, I don't know, it helps me not only, I enjoy my drinks better when I have honey in them. I like honey in my coffee actually better than creamer. But there's something about it. And, the Bible even talks about honey quite a bit in this way, in that it literally, like, I don't know how to describe this. It just brings a brightness to the day and to the moment when I can taste that honey. I don't know. It's something about it brightens my brain. So somehow the way God designed it. So it's not a hot toddy. Not that I would turn one down at this point if it would make me better. But it is very good Patriot Brew with some good honey in it. Okay, let's get to it. I know many of you also are feeling bad. I mentioned that in the description on Facebook. But it's going around. So a lot of people sick. It tends to be that way after the holidays because we gorge ourselves and we're around a lot of people. And so we spread stuff. And it is what it is. We certainly are not in the Anthony Fauci crowd of telling you to stay home and not be with your loved ones at all. But anyway, so I know a lot of you are under the weather. So thank you for joining me tonight, even if you are. But welcome to the Tavern. This is this is an amazing way to start 2026. I went into. I talked last week about the fact that we were ending 2025 and it was an amazing year. We had some things we weren't happy about and all that, but there were so many great victories. It was just an incredible year. And I talked about the potential for 2026 being amazing and maybe the best year that we've seen in our lifetimes for America, certainly. The 250th coming up. I mean, all the things that are going to happen in 2026. I didn't have any of this on my bingo card. I was not expecting. Is bingo card the right way to say? What is that expression? I didn't have any of this on my anyway. I don't know. Told you I'm not all there tonight. Okay, but I was not expecting the Venezuela thing. Certainly not the Iran thing. Didn't expect Tampon Tim to be running for the hills. I mean the way there's so many of them. Let me just hit some of these. Okay, first of all, let's start with what is the one item that we're going to be celebrating tonight that I did expect, based on some of the stuff that was happening in 2025, but did not expect even 2 years ago, 5 years ago for sure. The one item, and I know I've talked about this a lot, so some of you are going to be like, Rick, enough already, but it happened over the weekend. It happened on Friday. This is a massive, massive victory against the deep state. It is a massive victory against the experts that have tried to control our lives so much over the last 5 years, but really the last 5 decades. This is a massive victory against the control freaks that think they know better than we do, that think we're idiots and always want to tell us how to run our lives, how to raise our children, how to run our businesses, how to take care of our property. That Marxist mindset, that controlling, it's the people that I can't stand it. It's why I've always had a problem with authority, because as soon as you start getting outside of your authority, like I have no problem with proper authority. That's the right way to say that. I have no problem with proper authority, with God-given authority or authority given by the people. So, if you pull me over for speeding and we've agreed as a society that I shouldn't be going 90 miles an hour in an 85. We have some 85 zones in Texas, okay? But let's just say I get stopped for going 90 in a 65. Might have happened a time or two. All right. If that happens, maybe when I was younger and I just didn't have a concept of proper authority, I might have had a chip on my shoulder. When that happens to me today, I'm like, You got me. You have proper authority to stop me from going that fast because we agreed as a society we shouldn't do that. And I shouldn't be doing that. And so you absolutely, Mr. Police Officer, have the authority to do that. And therefore, I respect that authority. Now, the police officer that just pulls you over it for going 66 and a 65, okay, maybe not, right? At that point, you kind of start wondering, is this guy really? Anyway, that rarely ever happens. And frankly, I live in a great part of Texas where the law enforcement here is fantastic, and they don't do that kind of nonsense stuff. And I have not seen any of the local guys or gals take advantage of their authority and be like the COVID stand people were throughout COVID, like you see in a lot of the big cities. Anyway, all that I'm getting way off track here. My point is that the big victory I want to start with tonight is a shot across the bow to those kind of people that love to control other people and tell them what to do. And of course, the area where this has been most painful and unfortunately bought into by too many people is the medical industrial complex. It's the medical experts telling you how to take care of your body and what's best for your body. And of course, they've lied to us for decades and decades. When you just look at the health of America, you realize the experts aren't. When you look at how they handled COVID stand and made it far worse than it would have been if they just stayed out of the way, you realize the experts aren't. And so we've known that. I've known that for years. I've been in this fight for literally decades. But I think the awareness of that and the acceptance of that even discussion ever since COVID has been just like a hockey stick curve on the graph. It just exploded, and it's been wonderful. And now we see politically, finally, some victories in this area. So the massive, massive victory I'm talking about that happened in the last couple of days, I mean, this was, I believe, a victory against the root cause of so much of our pain, especially in COVID stand, the train wreck that government was in the COVID stand and the control and all of the bad policies that were made were a result of this one thing that I'm getting to in just a second. I know I'm teasing this way too much, but it was a result of the vaccine schedule. The vaccine schedule has been sacrosanct. I mean, when I would talk about it, people would get so angry with me and act like I was such an idiot and that my wife and I were morons for not just following whatever the CDC says and whatever the Texas Department of Health says. And we were the bad guys for even questioning. I remember about 5 years into this debate and being very involved in this issue, one particular member of the legislature who came from medical industrial complex money, like her family, major part of that. But she questioned when the rotavirus was added to the schedule because it's diarrhea. It's literally a vaccine against diarrhea. And why would you force this on everybody to take? Anyway, for even her, that was too much. But this vaccine schedule has been used to be a massive transfer of wealth from the American people to big pharma. And I know I sound like some conspiracy theorist when I say that. I hate that because I was a defender of the free market and big pharma and all of that until it colluded with government to no longer be free enterprise. When government is forcing people to buy a product, it's no longer free enterprise. It's now totalitarianism. It's now, we call it crony capitalism, but that's actually a horrible phrase because that's saying something's wrong with capitalism. That's not capitalism. It's actually the opposite of capitalism. That is the definition of fascism and Marxism and using government to control people and make them buy certain things and then transferring that wealth to those who had the power to control government to be able to do that. So the vaccine schedule has been the mechanism for that. It was the mechanism for the craziness in COVID. It was the very reason why they shut down ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine and all these things, because anything that was in any way a cure or a treatment for COVID meant that they could not use the emergency authorization statute to fast track the vaccines and force them on everybody. So that's why you had this. It felt weird at the time. You probably felt it even if you weren't tuned in to what we were talking about or the battles that we had been in for years. You probably felt like this is just weird that they're not exploring all of these opportunities. And if somebody says that it worked, why are we not doing trials on that, or giving more people that thing to try it and see if it works? It felt weird when that was happening in 2020 and even into 2021, when Fauci would come out and the Pope of the COVID religion, and he COVID cult, I should say, and he would, poo-poo these ideas that anything that was possible to be used. This is why it was all about the vaccine schedule and the process to get on the vaccine schedule, and the ability to have an emergency use authorization. I mean, all of that came back to, what does the CDC recommend, technically require, when you really get down to it? It all came down to this. It's the very reason why getting the COVID vaccine on the schedule is what triggers the immunity from that ridiculous law that, yes, my political godfather, if you will, and namesake for one of my children, Ronald Reagan, even supported for crazy reasons. But all of it comes back to the CDC recommendation on the vaccine schedule. So this move by President Trump and RFK to literally reduce the CDC vaccine schedule from, some people are saying 80 to 88. I think the accurate number is still 72, but maybe that was before some of the COVID shots were added. 70 to 85 shots, reduced down to around 30, which is still way too many. It was 32 when I started fighting this back in 1997, but 98. But it's a massive. I mean, you're talking about 2/3 being lopped off. It's down to 11 specific diseases that they're going to battle. And I'm not an what people call an anti-vaxxer. I think I'm thankful for vaccines and the technology, and we should use it when it works. But this is huge, folks. This is such a massive blow against the deep state. So what a way to start the new year. I'm pumped about that one. Okay, so that's just one item. All right, I'm going way too long on that one. Then you get Venezuela and Iran. Let's just take those at the same time. Who had this on their on their card? Dance card. That's what it is. Is that what it is? Is that the expression? I should look at my chat. Maybe somebody's already given that to me. It just feels like it should be bingo card, but maybe it's dance card. I don't know. Anyway, Venezuela and Iran both. So let's take them separately. I mean, the whole Iran thing is fantastic. That is a wonderful thing to be happening. And some people are saying, I mean, that he may actually flee to Russia. They may actually topple this Islamic regime, and just listen to the people in Iran and what they're saying. Look at what's happening right now, and it is a massive warning for the entire Western world of what happens when Islam takes over your country. But this could be huge, and it's a destabilizer for China. It's bad for Russia and China, which means it's good for us, okay? And then at the same time, Venezuela. Now, I don't know all the details of this thing. More and more is coming out. I'm learning, honestly, over the last 48 hours, as I was in bed sick trying to read as much as I could, the importance of Venezuela with regard to the long-term strategy that China has against us, that Russia has against us, that we need against just Marxism and Islam and everything else. I knew that Maduro was I've used Chavez actually as an example of a socialist dictator taking what was a wealthy country, should be an incredibly wealthy country and a free country and a wonderful place to be, and absolutely destroying it in short term with socialism. And then of course Maduro just made it even worse than Chavez had. And so I knew this guy was a narco terrorist, dictator and horrible guy. But I'm not into, toppling regimes, as a hobby for America. There's got to be significant national interest for us to be engaged. And I'm beginning to learn that significant national interest. First of all, the proximity to us and the amount of play that China and Russia both were getting, and how they were, positioning Venezuela as not only an economic tool because of as everybody's learned over the last couple of days, the largest, oil supply in the world, and, the gold supply. I mean, all of the things that they have, not only China and Russia playing for that and then having it right there that close to us if they have control of it, let alone all the, drug charges and everything that are the legal triggers and mechanism for being able to take Maduro. But when you put all of that together, if that's not a national interest for us, I don't know what could be. And so I'm blown away by what this means. I mean, obviously the military maneuver that was done, and how awesome our forces are and their ability to do this, that helps also to put some respect back in the in the room when the word American is spoken. There's been too many examples of weak Biden, weak Obama, ruining the name of America around the world and making it where they just kind of shrug their shoulders. And if they capture Americans or they do things to Americans or American interests, they're not really worried about it. This helps to, once again, just like the attack that we helped Israel with on Iran and their nuclear facilities, and there's like this we're starting to stack the success of what Donald Trump has been doing in order to gain back that respect around the world. All of that is adding up in a huge way. So I would just say, generally speaking, on both Venezuela and Iran, these are huge blows to China, huge blows to Russia. This is great for us. So what a way to start 2026. And then we get to the avalanche of just total corruption being exposed. Now, it's not good news that there was corruption, but it is good news that the corruption is being exposed. It is good news that the sunlight, as Bill Bennett used to always say, the best disinfectant, is now being shown not only in Minnesota, but in Washington State and all these other places where in California now, there's people that are finding these daycares and other abuses of power. Now, I went through this last Monday. I'm not going to go through all of this again. But don't forget, this is just a symptom. The daycare thing in Minnesota is a symptom of government being outside of its authority, as we talked about a few minutes ago. So anytime we give them trillions of dollars to do things they were never supposed to do in the first place, or that they're lousy at doing, we invite this very same kind of corruption and waste and fraud and all of those things. So it's not, we cannot fall for the rhetoric out there of we're just going to punish, we're going to punish these fraudsters. We're going to punish these. That's not enough. You got to punish these fraudsters and then take away the incentive for the fraud. Get the money out of the hands of government in these situations and let the marketplace and the churches and the neighborhood take care of those in need. Ronald Reagan, once again, you go back to that printer of Udell's, one of the most influential books on him other than the Bible, and discovering for himself the fact that government cannot take care of the poor, is terrible at doing those things, should not be funding daycare. My goodness, what a ridiculous use of federal dollars. Anyway, so this avalanche of corruption being exposed, big victory, and already in some cases being stopped. I'm glad to see the Trump administration move quickly on this. And then, of course, the cherry on top over the weekend is Tampon Tim running for the hills and literally like announcing that he's not going to run for re-election now, and it's all because of this fraud and being connected to his office and other areas of his circles. But literally doing the press conference saying that, telling him he's going to take questions, and then literally running out of the room. I mean, this guy, oh my goodness. Actually, Tim Walz doesn't run, he sashays, would be a better way to describe how he moves across the stage or wherever he is. And then the last one, you may not agree with me. Some of you can definitely comment and I'll address it. But the gift of Marxist Mayor Mandami. I mean, I'm thinking every time this guy opens his mouth or takes an action, it is going to help Americans see the stark contrast between being an anti-American, socialist, Islamic, anti-Constitution guy versus what it means to be pro-America, pro-Constitution, pro-free market, pro-American values. I mean, this guy is everything America is not. And at the same time, you got Donald Trump in the White House doing everything he can to be everything that America is. So it's an incredible contrast. I actually think it's good. I'm sorry, not sorry for New Yorkers. I mean, you're the ones that are going to suffer the most as a result of this contrast being on display for everybody. And so, thank you. Thank you, New York, for giving us a bright, dark, I don't know, a shining, wrong word probably, but an example of how bad Marxism can be. And it's almost like, I guess, back to the first good news item. This is like an inoculation. This is like a vaccine against further Marxism. if the poison of Mondami in New York, having a Marxist mayor in New York, if you put just enough poison into the full American body, right? It's painful right there where it's been inserted, and there's going to be some damage to the tissue there. But the white blood cells and everything else are going to run to that part. Hopefully, we as a nation are going to say, look at what's happening. Look at how bad this is. This is Hugo Chavez. This is exactly the kind of stuff Hugo Chavez did when he came into office. And so every day we hear Marxist mayor Mondami, we will see an example of what Marxism is all about. And maybe it will be just enough poison into the American, what's the word I'm looking for? Ecosphere, whatever, to cause us to become immune. I don't know about immune, but certainly be able to stave off this kind of evil. So there you have it. I started with vaccines. I ended with a vaccine. Pretty wild. Last thing, just an announcement. We have some space left for the Flashpoint event at Patriot Academy. It's going to happen January 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. This is an amazing opportunity. When I say space, there's not many, a few dozen, I think. It's a very limited event. And basically what we've done, because we know how much coverage we're going to get with Flashpoint, and we love our Flashpoint Army people, we've are basically giving away a 3-day event for free that would normally cost you about $500 to be able to come do what we're going to do that weekend. And so if you want to be a part of that, go to, not to Patriot Academy, go to fparmy.com. fparmy.com. That's flashpointarmy.com. fparmy.com. Click on events, and then scroll down to Constitution City. That's us. Constitution City, and register for that event. It's $79, and normally it would cost you, like I said, about $500 to come and spend those 3 days with us. And you get to choose between doing the handgun defense class or the legislative simulation. We call it the Patriot Experience, the Citizen Congress. So you can choose which of those you want to do while you're here. I think the weather's actually going to be great. I mean, we wanted both options available to people to either be indoors in our legislative hall going through our full-blown legislative simulation, which is incredible. If you've never done it, this is your chance to do it for only $79, and get to be in the audience for 2 live Flashpoint events, Thursday night the 22nd and Friday night the 23rd. So you can either do that full-blown legislative simulation for 3 days, or you can do the handgun defense class. You can sit in on the legislative part on Friday, and then do the handgun defense class on Saturday and Sunday. And we did that because we thought the weather was going to be terrible, and we wanted people to have the option to be inside. I think right now, just looking at the broadcasts on weather.com and other places, it might actually be really nice, like literally in the 60s, and a perfect environment for being able to do our handgun defense class. So your choice to be able to get to do that for only $79 is a steal. We only have so many spots though, so you got to get online right now, fparmy.com, and you can chew up those last few spots. All right, let's go to the chat and see what you guys have to say about all this and what questions you might have for me. Trump seems to have definitely read the book on Speak Softly and Carry a Big Stick. I don't know about that. I don't think Donald Trump speaks softly ever. So I think like with everything, Donald Trump has rewritten the book. Okay, so Teddy Roosevelt had that. I think was the one that did that quote: "Speak softly and carry a big stick." Donald Trump has rewritten that to speak as boldly as possible and carry a big stick. Let's see. Sorry to hear that, Josie. You got sick over Christmas too. Fighting off that cough. I know. I'm not so sure that this isn't some other Chinese poison, because this thing has been weird. It hasn't. I mean, normally I get something like that, cough, sniffles, whatever, and I can tough it out over a couple days and it's gone. This thing's been after me for really about a week, but hit me on Saturday afternoon. That's when I was like, oh my gosh, I really do have something. Let's see. Also, Josie, is it just me, or is New York enjoying being the odd one out or the one against everyone else? Off the top of my head, every war America has fought, New York was the drag or the complainer. Well, I'll say this. I do want to point out that as much as I sometimes disparage my Yankee friends, and part of that's just being a Texas Rangers fan, and part of it's being from the South. It's just natural to us. But I will say, this is not all New Yorkers' fault. Okay, this is in a big way Joe Biden auto pen administration allowing the ridiculous immigration, and not only, actually, you got to go back because really Obama's the one that started it. Actually, you got to go back to Clinton. He's the one that really started a lot of this open door policy on the immigration and inviting people in that really were never going to assimilate. There was never an indication that these people were going to assimilate. They should have never been invited into our country in the first place. So you have both the illegal and the legal immigration problems that led to this election of a Marxist in New York. When you look at the polling and you see all the data, it's insane the number of people that elected Mondami that are new to America. It is a massive part of the problem, and of course the fraud is not 100% that, but boy, you look at those Minnesota numbers and it's awfully close. Okay, who else we got here? A couple years back, I did the biblical citizenship class, and I thought that I remembered the original name for people in the government being government servants. Oh, I think maybe what you're remembering. I lost the rest of that comment. We did talk about that. I don't remember, honestly, in Constitutional Live or Biblical Citizenship if David Barton addressed this or not, but I know I've said for a long time, in fact, even when I was in the legislature 20 years ago, I wouldn't say elected officials. I always told people, don't say elected officials. It sounds so, they're so special. Always say public servants. They are our public servants. And it keeps that in mind of who they work for us, not the other way around. I don't remember if David mentioned anything about in the founding era what they were referred to. He may have. And so that's a great reminder. If anybody else out there that's been through the class recently remembers that, please chime in. Yeah. Alex, I would say Candace Owens is definitely becoming the female version of Benedict Arnold. That is true. She's become a major, in my opinion, traitor to the conservative movement and to the people that helped put her on the map, and is certainly not doing us any favors with regard to saving the country. Oh, man, Jeff, you're so right about the PCR test. That was part of the scam, right? They had to use that in order to create the chaos and create the panic out there. And yeah, no doubt. It's why I refuse to go get one of those tests the entire time. I've never had one and won't do one. Yeah, no doubt, especially that nostril thing. I mean, what an insane thing that we actually embraced that, and that people would go sit there and let them shove that thing that far up their nostrils into the cavity and whatever might have even been being introduced from those crazy tests. Yeah, man, I'm glad you reminded me of that. Another thing for me to be thankful it's gone. And the vaccines, the test, I mean, all that, it's no different. It's just like anything else. Good things can be used for evil. I mean, all music, movies, entertainment, business, I mean, all money, all of these things. We have to always keep that in mind, right? It's something that God created, or that He gave us the ability to create. He had been creating it through us. All of these things can be used for good or evil. And that's why it really does come down to a stewardship issue on our part. What are we doing to take back those spheres of science, of medicine? I mean, these are areas where when they're used for God's glory and they're used in the proper way, they are such a blessing and they bring glory to Him and they're benefits to us. And it's just like that with, like I said, money and entertainment and games and all of these things. So yeah, man, we need to be doing our part. It's just like Lance Wallnau said for years. Those are spheres, mountains that we gave over to the enemy that we need to get back for sure. Let's see. Yeah, I wish Fauci was in jail too, man. I would rather. I mean, actually, that would be, if I could pick anyone to be prosecuted and be an example, it would be him, no doubt about it. And every day he's out walking the streets is another day that encourages the next Anthony Pope of the COVID cult religion, Fauci, another one to crop up later on in the next generation, if not now. Okay, bingo cards. Okay, so maybe my maybe my fog is not as bad as I thought it was. Jeff, I was wondering about this. I want to, maybe somebody out there, maybe you can verify this for me. I saw a post or a tweet, whatever, that said that the 5 day, the prayers 5 times a day thing, that they don't fill the streets and block traffic in Muslim nations like that they only do that in nations where they are trying to conquer. I am curious about that. And so this call now in New York it's literally part of the process of conquering. To hear that and then to inconvenience anyone that is not participating with them is something they don't do. They do the prayer part. I know they do the prayer part and the call to prayer in their nations, but the idea of blocking the streets and making it an inconvenience to anyone that is not joining them in that prayer, I would be really curious. Authentic Islamists need to be deported. Not all are real Muslims and fake it due to fear of authentic jihadis. Yeah, interesting. No, and Jeff, I'm all for it, man. At this point, it's like if you're not here to assimilate to our value system, which Islam is not compatible with our value system, then you need to be deported. No doubt about it. If it weren't for some of Pastor Hank's prophecies, I would say New York City was hopeless, but he has had some good, strong, encouraging words for that city's future. I agree with that, Jeremy, and I think so many of Hank's prophecies have come true, and I've watched that over the last 3 or 4 years. It's been amazing, and I think that the role of New York City and the rebirth of New York City is absolutely possible, and I think is part of what he has prophesied would happen, and frankly, I think is needed for America's true renewal and rebirth. And so again, I'm hoping the pain that New York is going to experience as a result of this man as the mayor. And as a result of this flood of immigration into New York, the pain is going to eventually cause this change to take place. And so I am not giving up on them at all. Thank you for that. Happy New Year and God bless America. I'm with you. Yeah, public servants. I think we need to bring that terminology back. Wade, clarify for me what you mean on New York City and property rights. There might have been something happen up there that. Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. I think I saw. I scrolled past it. I didn't read it. I should have. But it had something to do with one of Marxist Mayor Mondami's comments about. It was something to do with property rights. Help me remind me what that was, if you don't mind. If you're still with us and you can type that in there. Yeah, I think I'm not sure. I love homemaking 2706. I'm not sure who that is, but thank you for your comment. I think doctors have become legalized drug pushers, generally speaking. I know some really good doctors that refuse to play that game, and they're hard to find. I'm telling you, man. They've been well. Not only have they been trained into this brainwashing. They've weeded out the good ones. I mean, when the last 4 years, the number of doctors that lost their licenses for not going along with the scam, not going along with the brainwashing and the tyranny. I mean, in fact, I just watched a clip before we went live that was a reminder of how bad it got. It was one of these clips where they said, "We'll hold you down and inject you with this if you don't consent." That's not consent, and just so much of that nonsense. They basically drummed out. It's kind of like in the military. They used it to weed out the good people that were willing to question things, and so I think in the medical industrial complex that's happened. So your statement, I think, is true for too many doctors, but I'll just defend a little bit the handful of those people that stood up to this and fought it, and Mary Talley Bowden and my friend Dr. Steve Hotze and so many others that fought the establishment on this and are still fighting them. I mean, they're still having to spend their own personal wealth and risk their license to fight those people. So thank God for them. And I will just throw in here again, part of the problem is putting government in a position that it should not be in, giving it authority that it should not have. I do not support all of these government licenses for everything. I think that you allow the market to handle that, and you'll end up with associations that are sort of like government entities, but they don't have the power to force people to do things. They have the power to educate. They have the power they can license their members, and if one of their members does something that they need to be punished for, or their license taken away for, then they can do that, and they can make that public. And so then we, as consumers, consumers can decide which of these associations we trust most, and so we want to pick a doctor or a lawyer or a whatever professional, architect, accountant, that is licensed by an association that has national respect or state respect, and then that entity holds their members accountable, and you end up with competition if they go down, if they end up being co-opted. Like, let's take the way the media was co-opted by Big Pharma and how every ad was a Pfizer ad, and they're paying them off to say good things about the COVID vaccine. You start seeing that happening, then that association will lose its credibility, and a new one will crop up, and you have to start putting some responsibility and some trust in the individual's decision making. And if I'm going to pick a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant that I do my homework on based on word of mouth from people that I know that have had a good experience with them, or potentially an association that is not government controlled. We've gotten to the point now where we license beauticians. Are you kidding me? We're going to have a state license for whether or not you can cut someone's hair. We have a license for whether or not you can braid hair. I mean, that is so insane and ridiculous. And there's so many other examples. I had a friend that tried to get me to require a state license for auctioneers. I think they finally passed it after I was gone and out of the legislature. And this was a good friend of mine who was a fantastic auctioneer and did all of my campaign events way back in the day. But even good people get caught up in the idea that, oh, there's a bad actor out there that's going to make my profession look bad, so I need government to stop that bad actor. No, you need your industry to say that's a bad actor, and your industry come out and say this is someone that's taking advantage of people and we're against them. Once you create that government behemoth, and now they get to decide who gets a license to do whatever that profession might be. Oh my God, it's going to go off the rails every time. Please, let's bring back Atlas Shrugged as required reading for every school child in America. Okay, sorry, I'm getting off track. Thank you, Wade. New York City getting first dibs on purchasing private property. Some other comments on collectivism. I think that's what it was. Yeah, it was like something about the city being able to buy. I don't remember if it was forced or not, but either way, it doesn't matter. The more government controls the land, the less freedom we have. I mean, look at what the federal government did with all the western states. And some of these states, they still own 60, 70, 80%. That's not an exaggeration. Go look at that map from the American Lands Council. It's insane. And what have you done? The more of that land you control, the less freedom the people have. We don't get to use them. Those aren't public parks where we all get to go enjoy the green space or camp out. Those are actually places nobody gets to go. It's insane what they've done. And so just imagine if they do that with, property in the financial district in New York, or take as much housing as possible out of Manhattan or wherever. You pick any place on the planet. You give government control over that land, you're reducing freedom for sure. And I'm glad you reminded me of the word that was used, the whole, collectivism, which of course, as we've all seen in our social media feeds. If you're watching me, you're probably on some of the same feeds anyway. Collectivism killed 100 million people last century. And this turkey gets up and says that he's against rugged individualism, that he wants to take that away, and he wants to have, this warmth of collectivism. What a lie, man. And so many people falling for it, I'm telling you. But also it does give us a chance to have the debate. It brings back the discussion of how important rugged individualism is, how important failure is, how important it is to let people fail and succeed and live with the consequence of their failure and the benefits of their success. Yes, that's rugged. Yes, it's tough. And it's what made America great. The lie of collectivism is that it's always going to bring us all down to the lowest common denominator. It's going to make everybody equally miserable every time. No question about it. Look at Venezuela. Perfect example. Anyway, we could go on that one for a while. Oh, I love it. I didn't know you used to use that, Wade, the Atlas Shrugged. They made a movie about it a few years ago. I can't remember who did it. It was one of the conservative groups that put the money together to finally make the movie. And I think they were going to do 3. It was going to take 3, because it's a thick book. But I think it was going to take 3 movies, 3 parts, kind of like with Lord of the Rings, to tell the whole story. And it seems like they made I know the first one, I remember the first one was done, I thought, really well. And then the second one I thought wasn't as well, and I don't think they got the funding for the third one. Maybe they did, and I'm missing out on that. But and I don't like doing Atlas Shrugged by itself because Ayn Rand was not, she was not a religious person at all, certainly not a person of faith, but man, she understood the threat of totalitarianism when you mess with the market the way that it does. And even John Galt's rant at the end of Atlas Shrugged is very anti-God in a lot of ways. And so and I know you would have done it this way, Wade, because you're a person of faith like me, but when you do it, when you use Atlas Shrugged along with some of the other some of the founders' documents and their writings, and why free enterprise is important, and just add some Ben Franklin, even, who least religious of the founding fathers, but he said that the free market is the means under God of establishing the freedom of our country entire and handing it down complete to posterity. So even he was talking about using ethical capitalism and making sure that you knew where those freedoms came from, and why the Declaration says they were endowed by our Creator, and why it says pursuit of happiness, not guarantee of happiness or redistribution of happiness. So just combining those things, you get all the good from Rand and Atlas Shrugged and some of her other stuff as well, but putting it in the context with the other things. So good stuff, man. Good stuff. Why do you think Trump is conducting a regime change, saying Maduro isn't elected when he himself is not constitutionally elected? Participatory activities outside Article 1 are not elections. Okay, I don't know what SE means. I don't know if that's a name. I'll call you Say. I don't know how you can say that Trump wasn't constitutionally elected when that was the most obvious landslide election that we've had in quite a while. So I don't even know what the argument is for how he wasn't elected. Maduro was just like Chavez. I mean, these aren't actual elections that take place. Once you have a socialist dictator that's controlling the election process, those aren't true elections. So that's what Trump is referring to. And then, of course, we know that the machines that became basically used by most of Western civilization, that whole system came out of Venezuela. So it's part of why we question, in many ways, the system. I'm trying to remember the name of the book I just listened to that my friend Charles Beatty sent me. It was, or not book, but interview. It was so good. Charles, if you're on tonight, if you would post that, it blew my mind. And it's a very reputable guy that did all this homework on the background of that coming out of Venezuela. So anyway, that's the difference in those two elections. I also am not sure. Let's see. Thank you for reposting. All votes for representatives in Congress must be by written or printed ballot or voting machine, the use of which has been duly authorized by the state of law. Look, if you're saying that the Electoral College didn't meet or didn't have its process in 2024, there's zero evidence of that. The Electoral College was far less questions about any possible manipulation of the Electoral College in 2024 than in 2020. In 2020, you actually had legitimate claims of fraud with regard to the election process, and not just the 6 states that were being challenged during the opening of the ballots of the Electoral College, but several others as well. And that was shut down. So the questioning of those ballots and the ability for Congress to investigate that was stopped by the frat party at the Capitol on January 6th, which is why I'm such a believer that the instigators that started breaking glass and led to it and pushed this whole going into the Capitol thing were part of the problem. They were doing that in order to stop the investigation, not stop the counting of the electors, but stop the investigation of the electors and the electoral votes. None of that happened in 2024. So I don't even know what you would be referring to there. Okay. Islam stages prayer outside the mosque in the streets to provoke infidels to respond negatively and then cry persecution and get police assistance to expand their religion. It's the political system they use. We need new laws and wording around aggressive religions. Recalling Waco. Wow, that's good, Jeff. That makes total sense. That the strategy would be we're gonna rile up the infidels by inconveniencing them to the point that they'll attack us, and then we can cry persecution. That actually makes a ton of sense, And because we've actually seen them say and do exactly that. Man, that's a great point. Good analysis there. I scrolled too fast earlier, and I think I may have missed a few of those. Oh, he actually said that within 5 years, private property rights will go away and it will be collective property rights. Then he commented that the white man will be the most affected by this. That's right. That is part of what I had seen. You know, this has been a long time coming, folks. I mean, this is where the whole connection between, and this, man, I hate to sound like this, but this is true. Glenn Beck got it right on his chalkboard years ago. But the globalist and all the stuff you heard from the Davos and all of that nonsense about you're going to eat bugs and love it, you're not going to own property, you're only going to rent and you're going to love it. All this programming they were trying to do to get us convinced that socialist, bring everybody down to the lowest common denominator thing was actually going to be enjoyable and that we would want that. Those seeds have been planted for a long time with these people. So it's the connection between the globalist, the Marxist, and the Islamist that is what we should be concerned about. Now, that sounds crazy, but it's exactly what is happening and what has led to this moment in New York. And that's why we have to stomp it out and we have to show why this is not going to be acceptable. And the people in New York have to stand up and say no to it. No doubt about it, man. That's a great point there. When a new illness crops up, how many do you think are going to believe in it after the failure with the COVID shots, and how many do you think will refuse to receive it? Man, Jeremy, you know, you raised something that even I'm talking April, maybe May of 2020. I mean, early on, the chaos started, you know, right around March 1st, right? February 20 something, I think, was when the Diamond Princess came into port, and you know, everything started going crazy. And it was no later than the end of April. You can go back to my posts and videos and things back then. And what you just said, that was one of the things that I raised. I was like, you know, folks, we're actually going to create a scenario here. This is going to be the boy who cried wolf, because we overreacted so bad to a virus that we knew pretty quick this is going to be a 0.1% case fatality rate. In Trump's words, a bad flu year. Exactly what it turned out to be, right? We overreacted so much so, and all of the media and everything, it was going to be a 3% case fatality rate and all the crazy. I can't remember all the numbers they threw out, but you can see the videos where they all said the same thing, so it's clearly a script. And then when that turned out to be a lie, I was saying literally at the end of April and in early May of 2020, folks, this could create a scenario of boy cried wolf, where when we do get a black plague, I'm not saying that's never going to happen. I mean, that's very feasible. I mean, that could be sent by God. It could be just because of all the DNA and microbiological crazy stuff that we're doing and testing and releasing, and that we could very well end up with a black plague situation that does have a 3 to 5% case fatality rate or a 20% case fatality rate. And if that happens, and we have the ability to try to stop it early, it's going to be real tough to convince me. I mean, I'm a pretty rational, logical. I'm a science guy. I'm going to go study those studies and figure it out. It's going to be hard to convince me, let alone a lot of the people that are just so hacked off from being lied to for the last 4 years, and the masses and the people that aren't going to take the time to study. So you raise a really good point that I have not figured out a solution to. It's part of the reason that I call for in this book an end to the Emergency Powers Acts that were passed in the 1970s in every state. That I think you need to get rid of those, and instead a governor. What I call for in here is that a governor, if a real black plague hits, then a governor has to declare martial law. If you're going to tell healthy, innocent people they have to stay in their homes, you only do that if there is such a danger out there that you're willing to declare martial law, and therefore you're putting your career on the line, you're putting everything on the line to do that. So the scientific data and input and everything's got to be really, really strong, and therefore you declare martial law, and if you're wrong, you pay the price for that politically, for sure. If you're right, you'll end up saving a lot of lives, but hurting the economy and everything else in a big way. And it will be so severe, we'll figure out really quick whether or not you're right or wrong. So that's what I'm calling for is one of our 12 steps. It's actually step number 12. It's the last one I have in there. There's a lot of other things that are a lot harder work and long-term to build. But to your point, I think it's going to be tough to convince people. And now, obviously, if it's a Black Plague situation and you have the true death tolls, you remember how they played the videos from Italy and what was the other place? South Korea, maybe? I can't remember, but they played those hospital videos of these, bodies piled up and the hallways filled, and they used that to convince us that it was that bad. Well, this time, we're probably going to have to see it in our own communities. And because remember when all that happened and we were like, I don't understand it. I'm not seeing this in my community. I'm not seeing the hospitals being overrun. In fact, they were emptying the hospitals of everybody else. Remember how much all the other diseases went through the roof, and deaths by all kinds of things went through the roof because we didn't want anybody coming to the hospitals. Anyway, I think next time around, if it happens in our lifetimes, for those of us that live through this, unfortunately, there will probably have to be some significant death toll before people go, yep, this thing's real. My, aunt so-and-so or my nephew so-and-so or whatever, it happened to them or it happened to my family. And that's unfortunate, but that we warned about that in the early stages of COVID. That was part of our cry, was to say, you're going to create a situation that is going to cause millions of people to be killed, and that could have been prevented. Like the opposite happened here. Lots of people died from a virus that the Chinese and Anthony Fauci together released upon us. And there were tons of deaths as a result of that, a 0.1% case fatality rate, which is fairly low. And nothing that the government did helped. In fact, it almost all hurt because it prevented the herd immunity from happening faster. It prevented healthy people from all the things that we've talked about a million times. Next time, it's going to be, you're going to get herd immunity fast probably, and you're going to have a lot of deaths, and it's going to be tough to get people to listen. I think they will eventually, but anyway, that's a way too long of an answer to your question, but obviously it's something that I've thought a little bit about and warned about and been concerned about. I'll close with this one because I got to get over on Flashpoint, but Josh asked, should I leave my church if they refuse to teach biblical citizenship classes? If that's the only sign of your church not being biblical and preaching the whole gospel, and actually applying the Bible to everything in life, if that's the only sign, I would say probably not. Because there's other reasons that your pastor may be saying no. They may not be familiar with it. I don't blame a pastor for wanting to protect their flock and make sure that it's a good course that's being taught in there. So if it's the only sign, I would say no. But if it's another sign, if your pastor did not speak out at all when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, didn't address it at all from the pulpit, if your pastor never talks about abortion or marriage or taxes or any of these biblical issues that the Bible speaks to, and your pastor never touches any of them out of fear of being political, then absolutely leave. If your pastor is unwilling to preach the whole counsel of God and preach the whole Bible, you should leave. You need to be in a Bible teaching church, meaning they teach the whole Bible and they apply it to whatever's happening in our neighborhood, whatever's happening in our community. They don't shy away from biblical worldview being applied to what's going on. They run to that. And there are lots more churches like that are growing all over the country. mychurchfinder.org, mychurchfinder.org, great place to find one of those churches. And we're going to work on reporting churches that don't do those things so that you know which churches to stay away from. So short answer is don't leave your church if that's the only thing that has shown you that they've got a non-biblical worldview, that they're literally preaching half the gospel or a tenth of the gospel and not the whole gospel. But if that's just the cherry on top, that's just the final straw that broke the camel's back, then yeah, leave. And like my friend Steve Maxwell says, if you can't change your pastor, like go to your pastor and try to get them to change on that. But if you can't change your pastor, then change your pastor and go find another one. Okay. All right, folks. Man, there's some other good comments in there. Thank you to everybody that commented tonight, that everybody that joined us here in the tavern. Hope you're feeling better. If you've been fighting it over the holidays, get you some good Patriot Brew, put some good honey in there, and we'll see you next week right here in the tavern.